Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to this very exciting panel discussion on the topic of authentic leadership. My name is Nina. I'm the CMO here at Eletive. For those in the audience who are not familiar with Eletive, Eletive is a people success platform that empowers HR teams, people teams, managers, and employees to work together to build workplaces where people thrive. So leadership is a concept that has undergone a significant shift over the years. And while perhaps authority and hierarchy were defining features of leadership a while ago, most of the impactful leaders today lead more by connection than by control. So features like empathy, active listening, and authenticity has moved to the forefront of effective leadership. Which makes sense because people don't want to follow people just because of their title. They want to follow people that they trust and connect with, and people who show up as real human beings. So today we're going to be discussing authenticity in leadership in the workplace. And I'm very happy to be joined by three very competent speakers on this topic. We have Lisa Skellström, who is the CHRO of Team Taylor. We have Adam Horn, co-founder of OpenOrg, and Emma Engebretsen, HR director of SEO. So a warm welcome to you, and a warm welcome to everyone in the audience. Please say hi in the chat. Let us know where you're calling in from. And if you have any questions to the speakers during the session or afterwards, please put them in the Q&A chat, because then there's the opportunity for people to vote on your question, and we will try to address as many as possible at the end of the discussion. So yeah, let's jump right in, and let's start by defining what it is we're actually talking about. What does authentic leadership mean? What does it mean to lead authentically? Who wants to go first?
I can go first then. For me, it means acting in a genuine way. Being authentic today means in the role as a leader, there are expected behaviors from you in different situations. Some behaviors probably comes more natural to you or feels better than others. Still, you have to perform and succeed in all situations that you're in. And doing that in an authentic way means to me being genuine and really being mindful of the situation. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's like authenticity is all about, like, are you actually what you claim to be? So there's two sides to this for me with when it comes to leaders or leadership. Is one is more of a personal side. Are you showing up as the individual you are and being true to yourself, your personality, your behaviors? You've got to make sure that fits within some agreed social bounds, within wider company behaviors. You still have to do that as a leader, but it's not trying to be something that you're not, at the same time. But also as a leader, you are in this really lucky position and privileged position where you typically have access to a lot more information, visibility to things that other people do not have. And I think there's an authenticity piece there that people need to think very carefully about, of like, am I giving people, am I presenting the same story to people that I'm seeing as well? There's a transparency discussion there, and I think that feeds a lot into authenticity and trust. So there's sort of two sides to this for me as well.
I think you've said a lot of great things, and I totally agree with them. And I think it's also a lot about staying true to your values as a leader. And that can be, of course, tough when you have to make sort of hard decisions and so on. But for me, being authentic is very, very close to your values, I guess. But it's also about like not having to be perfect, because we know that being a leader, I mean, you have more demands on yourself as a leader than if you're an individual contributor. But again, being authentic to me doesn't mean that you have to be then a perfect leader and have all the right answers and always smile and be happy. So it's also a part of showing who you are, I guess, the true version of yourself.
So why does it matter? What impact does authentic leadership have on people, on culture and performance, and what does the opposite of authenticity how does that impact people when leaders are not authentic?
But I think, as you said, Nina, in the opening here, that today leadership is something else. It's not about being leading with the whole hand, or people don't follow someone who's very decisive, or just because you have the role or the title that you have. Today, in this fast-pacing world where we have so many competent talents, and you can choose what employer you want to work for and give your time to, so to say, and your engagement to, it's more important than ever to really build relationships and showing trust and being genuine or authentic. So I'd say that's the only way to build successful teams today that really thrives and succeeds.
Yeah, I think the trust is the big word for me. I think when you realize that something is authentic, you trust it more, and that same thing applies to leaders. When you suddenly trust that someone is giving you the same version of something that they're seeing, again, the leadership, information, communication piece, I think, is big for me. You can start to trust in what that person is doing or telling you and saying, and what that does, which is amazing, is start to build some things like psychological safety in teams, understanding of like boundaries. What can I do and can't I do with this leader? There's a consistency element there. You start to build some habits, routines, and know what you're going to get from this person. So I think that authenticity piece helps people to believe that they can trust that there's going to be this consistent behavior. Again, it's like Lisa said, it's not about perfection. It's just about, I know what I'm going to get from this person. And that helps me understand how I can work with them.
I totally agree. And I think, I mean, also why it's important, because I think it depends a lot on what type of organization you want to build as well. What type of culture do you as a company value? Nina, you mentioned a shift from other type of sort of leadership behaviors previously to moving into a more authentic way. And I think that also has to do with what you talk about, like people first organizations. So I think that also has a strong connections. And to be a people first organization, then I think that the authentic leadership needs to be in place, because as you both said, Adam and Emma, it creates sort of trust, but it also brings out the willingness of your team members to bring out their best. And that creates engagement. So why it's important? Well, if you want the high performing company and you have an authentic leadership, I think that all ties together, where people also want to invest the best of themselves. So it's like kind of ties up in that way. And to your question as well, Nina, what happens when sort of leadership is not authentic? I think, I mean, there's a lot of different examples. I think in my own experience, what I've seen, especially when it's like tougher times, and when leaders and organization have to make tougher decisions, that's when the authenticity is really sort of tested. Because again, even though if it's something tough that we have to do, if it's layoffs or something, I think that that's a great opportunity to actually like walk the talk and show that you are want to be authentic when you have, as you mentioned, access to a lot of information, as you said, Adam. That's when it becomes important. So if those times when you are tested, if you then sort of shy away from being authentic, that's when I think it becomes a big challenge, at least.
Just to add to that really quickly, I think that's where we spend a lot of time with companies on helping to scope out like leadership and management behaviors and expectations. And that's where there's a culture fit argument here for leaders. And that if you're, as a leader, not aligned to the behaviors that are expected of you in your organization, you can try and fit into that, but you won't be your authentic self. There's an element of molding, but if someone tries too hard to fit into those behaviors, they're not being their authentic self. They're probably working too hard to do that. On a personal level, they're going to struggle. They're going to not enjoy their job. They're going to get frustrated. They probably won't thrive as a leader either. And those frustrations will seep into the team. So we always encourage people to opt out of leadership roles as well, or look for a company where the leadership behaviors aligned to you. That's a really important thing to sort of to dive into that a lot of companies don't.
I really agree with you, Adam, here. And I think that's an important part to also add to this conversation. So being authentic doesn't mean that you can be truly yourself in your situations, because as a leader you have a role and you have expected behaviors in different situations, and how to build your team and make your team successful, because that is what leadership is all about, is making the team successful. Without a team, you're not a leader. So that's the and then authenticity cannot mean that you can be truly maybe yourself in all situations. There will be situations where you need to adjust your behavior or be more mindful in order to make the team thrive. And layoffs, probably today, most leaders think those situations are the toughest. I do personally. But it can also be like when you have meetings where you need to troubleshoot or find new ways of working, and you need to today also work online more through different like Teams meetings. You don't have so many tools to communicate today. You only have your voice and what you see on the screen. So we miss so much of our communication skills and how to use them. So that also makes like tougher or discussions more of a risky zone. So as a leader in those situations, it's even more required that you are mindful and really think about how to get your team with you in those situations. So yeah, I think as you said, Adam, with the behaviors expected in roles, that is maybe more important than ever.
So it's about striking that balance between being your authentic self, but also being professional, right? And that's can be a fine line to walk. And the more sensitive the situation, the more important that you get it right. Do you have any advice for leaders on how to navigate that? And also, do you have any advice for HR people trying to support the leaders in their organization in navigating that? Because I think one of the challenges with telling people to be authentic is that there's no playbook, because it's about being yourself, but not too much. It's like that balance. And what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I feel a little bit for leaders in some respects. There's been a big push in recent years, I think, for companies to encourage people to bring their whole selves to work. There's that sort of phrase of like bring your whole authentic self to work across the whole organization. But yes, we want that, but we also need to make sure we are operating within some agreed social like behaviors, etc. Which we've just touched on and talked about. So the things we sort of talk to HR teams about and also to leaders about is often trying to find out, do you have some documented, agreed, like operationalized values? A lot of companies just have values on like as words. They haven't gone deeper than that and turned them into do's and don'ts and behaviors and helped people understand what is acceptable and not here. So that's a really good step. Often there's some additional guidance there for leaders as well, like a bit of a leader manager playbook. And again, when we dig deeper, 9 times out of 10, companies don't have a documented definition for what a manager or leader is here in this business. And there's a question in chat just now I saw that leads to so many accidental managers, so many people who are put into roles that they shouldn't be in because companies just think a manager is a manager, a leader. They're not. So getting really clear and defined and documented on these things, as boring as that sounds, is like the first step to really starting to embed some of these behaviors. Getting clear on how we sort of identify, support, develop people into leadership roles is again a really important thing to think about. And then just working really hard on consistency. It's like going to the gym. You've got to sort of keep it up and work on it intentionally. Otherwise, it's not a muscle that you can just show up with randomly.
No, I agree, and I think HR plays such a crucial role here in the different phases, from employer branding and being true about who we are and how it is working here with goods and bads. But then also when it comes to recruitment, make sure that you put the right person in the right place. As you said, Adam, not everyone is suited for a leadership role, and I see so many times that we tend to promote people that are not suited because it's convenient, or they've been there for a long time, or they have the right hard skills, etc. But we know that potential and behaviors and your will be crucial when it comes to leading and managing these situations. And we all have risk behaviors. We all have situations that are risky for us, where we need to be mindful and self-aware and open to adjust.
Self-awareness, I think, is one of the keys also to getting this to work on
Yes.
an individual level. We've touched upon it, but if you think about authenticity in relation to transparency, and maybe Adam, something for you to develop on, but like, how do you navigate that line between being open and oversharing? Like, how much should you be sharing internally? And I guess it also, of course, depends on the organization, but do you have any general advice, maybe any examples of how to navigate that?
Yeah, we work with a lot of companies on building what we call like transparency charters. You can call them whatever you want, but basically you can help your leaders, your managers a lot if you help the entire business understand what transparency means here as well. That word means different things to every single person who's probably in this room. What one person's transparent is another person's like secretive. So as an organization, your job is to define what transparency looks like here, and how transparent we are. That's done at leadership team level. Typically, you can spend time effectively breaking down all the things that you could and should and might communicate to people at any point, and agreeing and aligning on how much we share and how much we don't share. It's a great exercise to do as a leadership team, but document that in a charter, share it with the team, and help employees understand and expect what is shared and isn't shared. GitLab are the best example to point people to for this. If you go to their handbook and look at their values, they tell people what they do share, what they don't share. And for the things that they don't share, they talk about why they don't share it. And they go really deep on it. So as a leader then in that organization, they almost don't need to worry about this thing because employees already know what will and won't be shared. Leaders don't have this pressure of having to share information or feel like they need to because it's already, people have already been told. So that's whistle stop, like run through, but transparency charters are a great thing to look at. And yeah, happy to help anyone who might want to explore that.
Awesome. So if you would share any actionable advice for leaders, practical hands-on advice on how to become more authentic in your day-to-day work, what would that be?
I would start with encouraging people to be self-aware, to take a personality test, for example, and see what are my strengths, in what situations will I probably thrive as a leader, in what situations will be challenging for me. Just knowing that about yourself, that's the first step. And then second is, of course, also that you need to be motivated by acting in a leadership role. And here we can help as an organization being clear with what is expected of a leader. How do we see a successful leadership? And then you must be open to feedback from your team and act on it.
Good point. I like the reflection part, whether it's taking a test or something else, but finding a way to or a moment to reflect on what authenticity means to you and where you might sort of struggle, as you said. And then, I mean, if you do find things where, okay, this is where I will be challenged or something to start, maybe not changing your entire self, but finding maybe one or two key things that you want to work with and potentially engage someone else, like a mentor or a buddy, someone who can help observe how you act maybe in these circumstances where you know that you will be challenged, to keep you sort of true to the change that you want to commit.
That's great. Can I just ask the ones you're not speaking to mute yourself when you're not speaking, because I'm getting feedback that there's some echo.
That's fine. Yeah, I would just add two things there. One is, we've talked about this a lot, but go back to the business and understand first what's expected of me as a leader, what like behaviors, what bounds am I operating in firstly, because that will help me understand what I can and should be, operating like. So we talked about that a lot. The other one is spending some time again on the self-reflective thing. Like team readmes and personal readmes are awesome, like little tactical tools to use. Great for self-reflection, to sort of get down on paper, like, who am I? How do I work under pressure, under stress, and etc. Share that with your team. Help them understand who you are properly and how you manage and how you lead. and they'll start to expect certain things, and that feeds again into a lot of the things that we've talked about.
Great advice. I think let's move on to the questions in the Q&A. We have quite a few interesting ones. So let's start with the first one, which is, what is your best tip to stay authentic when implementing decisions you don't agree with? I think most people have been in this position at least once.
Yeah, and definitely. I think that's one of the toughest situations as a leader. And for me personally, at least, I've been helped in these situations if I've had someone to actually discuss the decision with before I had to implement it. So helping me understand it better, and also find, even if that discussion ends up with me still questioning the decision, at least it helped me to better understand, because somewhere there is someone who understands this decision and think that's the right way to go forward. And I think that's the way to be, at least that helped me being authentic about it, really trying my best to understand why the decision has been taken, having and being able to discuss it with someone. But that's also because that's how I am.
Yeah, great thoughts. Any other thoughts around this?
We're starting to see more and more companies embrace this sort of idea of like disagree and commit, and having some, like, again, some documented aligned agreement around how we disagree, but also then commit to decisions. So you're never going to agree with everything, whether you're a leader or an employee in a business. There's going to be things that happen that you don't agree with. So I think for me, there's two sides. One is for the odd decision that you don't agree with. It's really healthy to look at, like, why are we doing this as a business? So are the communications clear on why? Help people understand that context. Really, really important. And can you still see why we're doing this for the company? And if you're aligned to values and mission and goals, you don't agree with it necessarily, but you can understand why we're going there. The second thing, though, is this is a compounding issue, I think, for people. So the odd thing that you don't agree with, fine, you can get over it, move on, etc. If this starts happening a lot, then that's probably a signal that you need to move on, and this isn't the right sort of environment and place for you. So there's a compounding thing that's just to consider over time, I think.
Yeah. And say, Adam, I think that's a great concrete tips actually for everyone when you're moving decisions forward, or to also give people a chance to have a forum for them to troubleshoot or to ask questions before you expect people to just accept and move on.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's move on to the next question. So the next question would be this one. How can a leader be fully authentic to themselves while pursuing the company's priorities that might not be aligned?
I think maybe it ties into a bit the previous question as well, but I think that the more the more information that you can access, and also making sure that you can ask, as you mentioned, Emma, all the questions that you need in order to just understand as well, okay, even if it doesn't align with my own sort of priorities and so on, at least find the information and find the reasons why. So I think access to a lot of information, I think that's an important thing that you need to request as a leader.
I totally agree. And on that, I would also say, like, being authentic doesn't mean always being like, of course, you must in your role implement decisions even though you don't fully agree. But it can also be okay to say that this is a challenging decision for me to implement, or this is something that I've really been struggling with myself to find why this is the best for us, and kind of involve your employees or your team in your process. I don't think you should be too afraid of that. At least that also makes you authentic.
Okay. Take the next one. That would be this one. So a recent study in NL showed that most leading persons are selected on their technical skills and not on motivating their employees. Any suggestions on how to better combine specialist and leadership skills in the selection process?
I have a platform.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Emma.
Sorry, Adam. I was just Google assess you and look at our platform. I'd say it's a great help for organizations to ensure that you recruit and develop talents based on also soft skills and personality and potential. I think as HR, we talked about that before. What HR can do in different phases of the employee journey here. But when it comes to recruitment, there is definitely a lot you can do to ensure that you have a more evidence-based and accurate decision when you place the best person in the place, best in the role, to ensure you don't only look at CV or past behaviors or hard skills. Sorry,
Yeah, no, it's fine. We touched on it earlier, but just to revisit that point, I think you see this happen in every single company in the world. So I don't know why it keeps happening, but people rushing to just promote the people who are the best salespeople, the best technically at their role, that they seem to be good at their role. So let's just, make them a manager or a leader. And it's not the right way to do it. So define and understand what is a manager here, the behaviors, the accountabilities, the responsibilities, build an interview framework around that, like you would with any other role, and start to actually identify who here has the right skills, like you say, Emma, soft skills as well, to do this job. It's not about technical leadership necessarily. Some companies it is, some it's not, and most it's not. And you're also taking an incredibly good technical person away from doing an amazing job as an IC. So anyway, we touched on earlier, but treat it like a proper hiring process. Most companies don't.
And also maybe just to add to that, I agree with everything that you said, but also, I mean, the specialist skills, the technical skills in this case might be really good to have as a manager as well, but maybe to have a discussion with that person, like, okay, this is what you are really excelling at. And now moving into a leadership role, this is what we need to develop, and have like an open and again, transparent conversation about the new skills that we need to add. And I totally agree with all of you, because I think it's a big responsibility making someone a manager. And as a company, of course, and as an HR team, we need to make sure that we provide the coaching and the tools that they need. So talk about why these skills are important, but also talk about what needs to be added.
Great answer. Okay, one last question. So it says, part of being authentic is sharing one's own experiences, both personal and professional. Is there an area of your personal life that you would never share with your team? And I guess in general, is there areas that should remain private and not be sort of entangled with our professional lives?
I think, I mean, as we said, being authentic doesn't mean that you have to be perfect. I usually think about like the difference between being personal and private. So for an example, something I think about, like if you come up to work one day as a leader and you're not feeling great because you are maybe tired, you've had a lack of sleep or something, then I think that's something definitely that you can say, like, hey, I'm not having the best day, I'm tired or something. But then maybe not sharing the reason why. If there's been a big, I don't know, if you've been in a fight with someone in your family, or one of your children is not feeling well and so on, maybe that's a part that you don't have to talk about, but it's okay to say, like, hey, I'm not perfect today, something has happened, or I'm just tired, but then not sharing all of the reasons, or making a big sort of, I don't know, talk about why. One example.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think this is also where you kind of need to find your own boundaries, so to say. Personally, I'd say, there are definitely things in my life that I'm private with at work, but I really try to build personal relationships with everyone at work, and with some I might be more private than with others, but that's but there's, I think everyone needs to find their own boundary here.
You can have a situation of too much information, and like everyone's entitled to some privacy in private life. You don't have to share information, but just read the room. There's too many leaders, particularly with COVID, who overshared about having to work from home when they've got pools and big gardens to work from, and there's other people living in tiny one-bed flats and having to. There were things like that where you shouldn't necessarily share things like that. Read the room, judge what's best.
I think that's a good closing statement. Read room. It's always good advice. Thank you so much for these insights. And as I mentioned, if you have more questions to the speakers, feel free to connect with them on LinkedIn and continue the discussion. It's been really, really great insights. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.